morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Very good. Well, it's great to be here with all of you in beautiful Austin. This is actually my first SPTechCon, so I want to start by thanking David and BZ Media for organizing the event and inviting us to participate. So thank you, David. My name is Seth Patton. As David mentioned, I've been with Microsoft for about 15 years, and I've worked on a bunch of different products. I had an opportunity to work on Windows Server and BizTalk in the early days. I worked on Project and Project Server, worked on SharePoint, Dynamic CRM Online, and Outlook. And I just recently rejoined the OneDrive and SharePoint team, which I'm very excited about. I actually worked on the SharePoint team back in 2005. Some of you here may remember that was about the time we launched SharePoint Server 2007, and we brought together Content Management Server and SharePoint Portal Server to create the first unified enterprise content management server. And in the following 3 years, it was a pretty amazing time in that, from a business standpoint, we went from being a $250 million business to a $1 billion business. And you don't have an opportunity to participate in that kind of growth too often in your career. But I'm back on the OneDrive and SharePoint team with a new mission to reinvent content collaboration and to revitalize SharePoint for the mobile-first, cloud-first era. And we're going to have another one of those growth spurts here, and hopefully all of you will be able to benefit from that. So it's an exciting time to be here. We're going to cover a lot in this 1-hour session this morning. We're going to talk about some trends that are shaping productivity and collaboration. We'll talk about some of the recent and upcoming innovations in OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, SharePoint Server 2016. Chris McNulty, who's joining me, is going to show a couple of demos. He's going to introduce Microsoft Power Apps, which will be good. And then for the last 10 to 15 minutes or so, I'm going to provide a view into where we're going with OneDrive and SharePoint, more at a high level to give you a sense of sort of how we're taking them forward over the next year or so. Some of what I say we haven't publicly talked about yet, so I appreciate you kind of keeping, during that section, keeping your tweets and your filming and your cameras to a minimum, and I'll let you know when that point starts. It's an opportunity for me to share with this group, people who made an effort to come here to Austin with some things, but do me a favor and not take advantage of that and get me in trouble back in Microsoft, so thanks. Where you can tweet, however, is throughout the keynote up until that time. In fact, I am told that we want you to tweet at the SPTC Keynote hashtag, and the tweets are going to be used in one of Chris's live demos later, so just know that all of your tweets will be shown on main stage here, so keep them family friendly. No pressure. I want to start by just reviewing briefly Microsoft's new mission and strategy under Satya Nadella, our CEO, because I think it helps set context in terms of how we're evolving OneDrive and SharePoint. So at the top level, our mission is fairly straightforward, but I think a good one, in that it's not about us, it's about all of you, empowering every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. And then that leads to our strategy, which is to build best-in-class platform and productivity services for the mobile-first, cloud-first world. And then to support that mission and strategy, we're executing on 3 bold ambitions. The first is to reinvent productivity and business processes with Office. Second is to build the intelligent cloud platform with Azure. And the third is to create more personal computing with Windows. And if you think about it, SharePoint and Office 365 are really core parts of all 3 of those ambitions, but it's really at the soul and the cornerstone of reinventing productivity. So we'll spend most of our time here talking about our vision around that. And if we look at our vision, it's really shaped by 4 key principles. And the first one is collaboration. And without question, people still get valuable work done on their own. But increasingly, firms and organizations realize that they need to get their people to work together more often and more deeply in order to be competitive. No one person has the answer alone. And the reality is the amount of data, the clock speed of the world is increasing quickly. And so people need to increasingly, to be innovative, need to harness the collective wisdom of their people. And those teams and organizations that are most successful are able to do that quickly, but do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice productivity. So there's a whole crop of new collaboration tools that are coming available to try and address this. We talk about it sometimes as the Hollywood model, because as the landscape is just ever changing and so quick, kind of like making movies, it requires bringing people together that has a diverse skill set, sometimes within the organization, sometimes it's outside of your organization, sometimes it's across the world. And they need to come together quickly around solving a complex problem or executing a project, and then they disband and go work on the next thing. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of these point collaboration solutions aren't well designed and or they're not integrated with the way people get work done. So it really is more collaboration for collaboration's sake versus collaboration in order to improve productivity. So when we think about collaboration, this is an interesting stat from a New York Times research that shows $650 billion lost annually on collaboration systems that were poorly designed and didn't actually lead to improved productivity. So we're investing aggressively in modern collaboration tools as a part of Office 365 that are integrated together and that are really integrated with the way people get work done in order to improve productivity, not just collaboration for collaboration's sake. The next area is intelligence. And again, with this sort of the clock speed increasing and the explosion of data, people need more intelligence to help them do things like connect with the right information and the right people at the right time, help them manage their time, deal with information overload. And to do that, we need analytics, services, and agents with intelligence that you'll hear a lot more about, but some examples across Microsoft, things like Cortana as your personal digital assistant. Things like Clutter. How many of you have used Clutter? Yeah, so Clutter is actually a fairly sophisticated service in that it uses intelligence from the Office graph in order to help you better manage your email. And then Delve, of course, which helps you to really started out as a project within the SharePoint team and really has taken off as a way to use intelligence in order to better discover people and information. So those are just a few examples, but if you really forecast forward, we see intelligence as one of the main areas where Microsoft and Office 365 can really help organizations and differentiate from a lot of the other solutions that are out there. Interesting here, Gartner just published a report that predicts in the next 2 to 3 years, 30% of organizations will be using graph-based applications to manage non-routine collaboration. So the next one is mobility. And here, people often talk about or think about mobility as making a great device or making a great app that works on your device. We really think about it a little differently. For us, it's more about the mobility of human experience. On average, in the US, people have more than 3 devices now, 3 or more devices. And so for us, it's really focused on having a consistent experience across those different devices. If I just think about my own life, I have a Windows PC at work. I have a Surface Book at home. I travel with a Surface tablet. I actually use an iPhone as my mobile device. I go back and forth. I have to use them all. Right now I'm using an iPhone. And the great thing about Office 365 and OneDrive is I can take my work with me wherever I go. And it's a continuous, consistent experience across all of those devices wherever I'm at. So I always have access to my latest work. I always have access to my communication services across those devices as well as my content. My daughter, on the other hand, is in 6th grade. In middle school, and they have iPads. Oh boy, they have iPads in her school. And she uses that with Office 365 and OneDrive, which is great to collaborate with her students and her teacher, but when she comes home, she uses our Surface Book, and she doesn't miss a beat. She's able to continue to collaborate. So those are examples of mobility for the human experience across devices instead of just the mobile device itself. And then the last area is trust. And really, none of the other things matter unless you have trust, unless people know that their information is safe and secure. And so we really think about trust as built into everything we do with Office 365. And this includes a couple of key components, and at the risk of going into too much detail, I'll rattle off a couple of them. I'll try not to bore you, but for us, it's really about built-in security. So that includes things like the physical security, but also the logical and data security. But it's also things like encryption at rest and in transit. It's things like advanced threat protection to guard against malicious malware as a new innovation that we just came out with. The second is privacy by design. So one of the things that's different about Office 365 is that there's no standing access to your data. We have a philosophy that it's your data. You own it. You control it. If you leave the service, you can take it with you. And so that's built into how we think about privacy by design. We also don't use your data for any purposes like advertising, and that's a commitment from Microsoft that's unique and different as well. And then there is transparent operations, so things like financially backed SLAs. You have transparency in terms of where your data is located, which isn't always the case with other cloud providers. And we do have service incidents. Just every cloud service provider does. But we're very thorough in terms of our service incident reviews, and we try to make that as transparent as possible as well. So that's the area of trust. Interesting here, 44%, probably not surprisingly, of organizations see privacy and security as the most important criteria as they select a cloud platform or a solution platform. Another study that came out from one of our partners, Avanade, they did a survey amongst a number of their organization customers who had recently implemented a collaboration solution. And this, I think, is important because it reminds us, well, why are we doing this in the first place? And that is 67% cited that they had increased productivity based on their implementation. 53% increased employee engagement, which I see as an increasing business driver of the customers that I'm working with. It's interesting how over time, as sort of business and technology have come together, it's not always the IT departments that I'm working with. Now, it's these interesting people from marketing and interesting people from HR. And HR, is there anybody from HR in the room? There should be. Couple, yeah. So they're actually turning from what historically has been more around, sort of operating costs and managing labor to at the forefront if we're going to drive innovation, making sure that their people are engaged. And so collaboration can be a great way to help there as well. And then this last one is a key theme. Touched on it before. It's doing it in a way where we're application consolidation and integration is key, instead of having sort of disconnected point solutions that aren't integrated with the way people work or your existing systems or security infrastructures. So as I talked about, we're investing a lot in collaboration across services as part of Office 365. And each one of these collaboration services has its own purpose. So if you think about Office, it's changed a lot. We're making Office more collaborative with things like real-time typing and app mentions and co-authoring. If you think about Outlook, of course, it's for email-based communications, but we're making email more collaborative and more social with things like Outlook groups. If you think about things like Skype, with now integrated voice, chat, online meetings, and video. And of course, things like OneDrive for anywhere access and sharing for all of your files, and SharePoint for content collaboration for your teams and across the organization. Yammer is really best suited for connecting more broadly across the organization or building community. So each one of these collaboration experiences has its own unique purpose. But then there's a set of suite-wide capabilities that you'll see at the bottom here, which connect those experiences together for things like common identity, common management, common security. And that's really important as we think about people working across these different experiences and still having IT have the ability to govern and control the data and who has access to what and to which applications. I call this the 3 Gs. Some people call it the intelligent collaboration fabric, but the 3 Gs, groups, graph, and governance. So groups, how many people are familiar with Office 365 groups? Yeah, maybe a third, half. So Office 365 groups, I think there's a little bit of confusion actually about what they are and how they can be used. Really simply, Office 365 groups is just a membership construct based on Azure Active Directory. So you have a team with a name and a list of people. Once you have that group, then you can use that group across all of the collaboration experiences to ensure that there's consistency between them. Now, in the first implementation of groups, we integrated it with Outlook in order to have Outlook group conversations and with OneDrive for Business. But moving forward, we're going to integrate the group's membership construct with Skype, with Yammer, and SharePoint team sites. And the reason I'm spending a little time on this is I often get asked the question, well, is groups going to replace Yammer? Is groups going to replace SharePoint team sites? Well, the reality is, once they're integrated in, and you can imagine every SharePoint team site has a group and every group has a team site, it doesn't replace team sites. Groups makes team sites better. Groups makes Yammer better. Does that make sense? And then with the graph, Office Graph is really the secret sauce of intelligence across Office 365. So what it does is it captures all the signals from all of the communications and collaboration that's going on. We happen to have a benefit of a lot of people using Exchange online for things like email and calendaring. So from that information, and of course it's all based on the permissions that you have access to and the content you have, we're able to provide better insights and better intelligence into these collaboration experiences. I mentioned Delve as an example and Clutter already, but increasingly you'll see intelligence from the Office Graph coming into collaboration experiences like OneDrive, like SharePoint, et cetera. And then finally, security and governance, which is really about that security and trust layer I talked about, but also the management in order to be able to have IT be able to control who has access to what information and have that governance across Office 365. So Office 365 has changed a lot in the last 5 to 6 years. We're now doing monthly updates on the services, and people will ask, well, how do you decide what services to update and how to update? The great thing about Office 365 in the cloud is we now have all of this data and insights about what's being used, what's not being used, where are users running into problems, where are we having performance problems that we need to improve, and that's been a really big area of investment for SharePoint Online and will continue to be over the next few months here. But it's really based on that usage telemetry and then also user voice. How many of you participate on user voice? I'll tell you, so if you're not and you want to have input into product development at Microsoft, that is the new currency for customer feedback. Because all of our engineers now are not measured anymore on delivering products on time, on budget. It is all about usage. They all get measured on usage, and so they are very in tune now to user voice and the ranking of user voice, and they really use that as a key component of how they prioritize the backlog of service updates. We're bringing out new and innovative capabilities all the time. And it used to be, boy, that's interesting. You see, seems to be a projector issue. Let's see if that helps. Better? Yeah. So it used to be, people would say, well, gosh, you guys aren't innovating in Office 365 enough. We haven't seen anything for years, and now it's the other way around. It's like, wow, you guys are bringing out so much that I can't keep up with it. And so I think we've swung the pendulum in a way that's balanced, and you know that you'll continue to see innovation with Office 365, but in particular with OneDrive and SharePoint in a pretty major way in over the next year. And then, of course, we now have best-in-class applications with Office and our services working across mobile devices. So Android, iOS, Windows Phone, as well as the Mac and PC platforms. And then really nobody is matching the investment in R&D that we're making around security and compliance, and then the insights piece that I talked about. The other one I wanted to hit on is we're really doubling down on hybrid. And some of you who have maybe seen some of the investments in SharePoint Server 2016 are getting a sense of how we're rethinking the way we think about hybrid, but really we're doing that across Exchange, Skype for Business, and SharePoint. And the realization is an important one because a lot of our customers, I think, were faced with the issue of to be able to take advantage of some of the new innovations that are coming out from Office 365 was an all or nothing proposition. I needed to migrate all my data, and I need to figure out a way to migrate my custom apps to the cloud. And so we realized that the way we were implementing hybrid was also too complicated, and it didn't have a great user experience across both on-premises and cloud. So that was a key investment that we've made here with SharePoint 2016, and I think is one of the areas that I'm most excited about in the new release. So the other thing here is, based on customer feedback, evolving our customer communications and roadmap programs. So how many of you are familiar with roadmap.office.com? Yeah, so a number of you are. So really a commitment to keep that as up-to-date as we can at any time. And that's a big change from how it used to be, where you'd really have to come to a conference like this to learn what was coming. And then things like Fast Track to make deployment and adoption better and provide better guidance and better assistance for that. Expanding our first release programs, which now include SharePoint and OneDrive as of last month. And so Office 365 is now broadly considered the leader in cloud productivity, but SharePoint continues to be a core part of that growth. You can see here now we have over 75,000 customer organizations, 160 million users, 1 million developers, 50,000 partners, making up a solutions ecosystem of $8 billion. And that's important for a few reasons. One, that ecosystem is important as an asset, of course, to Microsoft, but also for our customers in terms of the innovation that comes along with that. Another interesting data point here, Nielsen Norman just released a report on the top 10 intranets for 2016, and it's a pretty cool report. It's publicly available. You should go see it. They have it's like 100 pages. You can go and look at each of the intranets and learn about what they are. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that 9 of the 10 top intranets were built on SharePoint, which is, pretty cool. They didn't promote that, but you can go through and find for yourself. The other thing I'll mention is now 40% of all of our SharePoint seats are now online. In the last year, 2x usage growth for SharePoint Online and 5x content growth. So you all, our customers, are making that transition to the cloud, whether that's migrating to the cloud, whether it's adding cloud capabilities to your on-premises server release through hybrid. We are seeing that transition, which is great. The other reason why I wanted to make a point here about how important this ecosystem is there's a renewed focus on SharePoint within Microsoft right now. And about the last year or so, I think there's a recognition that we had maybe let SharePoint lose its way a little bit. And we know that we have a lot of work to do in terms of updating the user experience, in terms of modernizing the platform. So from Satya and the SLT on down, there's a clear charter to make sure that SharePoint is at the forefront of our reinventing productivity ambition and at core to the innovation that happens in Office 365. So it's an exciting time to be with the SharePoint team. Just in the last 6 to 9 months, so Jeff Teeper, who some of you may know, came back to lead the engineering team. He was running corporate strategy for Microsoft. And just in the last 6 to 9 months, the acceleration of innovation is pretty amazing across OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and SharePoint Server 2016. But really, in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to start seeing a lot more as well, some of which I can talk about today. Let's start with going through some of those recent innovations. OneDrive for Business has been completely revamped over the last year. So it's our solution for storing and sharing personal files, getting anywhere access from across any device. And we revamped the web user experience. Next-gen sync is now in production. All new mobile apps, a unified API, as well as a number of IT enhancements for security and control. In terms of sync, it's been a journey, for sure, to get to a place where we have now next-gen sync in production. We have a reliable and high-performant, rock-solid sync across the PC and Windows. And we still have, there's still a few feature gaps that we'll close in the next 2 to 3 months things like Windows 8.1 support, Office integration, things like a simpler migration from the existing Groove client. But we have a high performance and reliable sync engine now. And then one of the things that we've heard loud and clear from customers is they want the next gen sync engine for OneDrive for Business to also sync SharePoint libraries. And so I want to let you know that that is something that we're committed to doing as well. We'll start with SharePoint Online document libraries and eventually on premises. I can't give you specific dates right now, but you'll hear shortly some of the dates that are coming for those. Next is mobile apps for Android, iOS, Windows Phone, including the new Windows 10 mobile app. These are all 4-star plus rated. These are the best mobile apps in the file sync and share industry, bar none, next to each of our competitors. And we're making updates all the time on these apps. So we just released offline support for iOS, for Android. We released the ability to annotate PDFs on iOS. We have now Office Lens support for work photos, which is a really cool application. And we're going to bring all of those enhancements across Android and Windows Phone as well. So with the new web user experience, it's definitely simpler and easier to use. But the thing that has changed the most for me is just how much faster it is. Responsive, wicked fast web user experience, and a bunch of the learnings in terms of how we architected that we'll be bringing to other parts of SharePoint as well in order to make sure that we gain those similar levels of performance and efficiencies. The other thing is improved external sharing and things like time-based expirations. But we're not done. External sharing is going to be a big investment coming up, and you'll see some things in the next couple of months to make it just a lot easier to share externally and not require as much from the recipient in terms of having to sign up for a Microsoft account, et cetera, but also having the control of making sure that once something is shared and after it's accessed, that it's no longer accessible. In addition, we introduced a number of IT controls, so things like being able to set policies on domains and users for who can share what externally. New auditing and reporting as well, which was one of the biggest customer requests that we've had, and that's now rolled out in production. So OneDrive for Business has come a long ways in the last 6 to 9 months, but there's a bunch more that we're doing, and I'm excited as we get to the vision section to tell you a little bit more about where that's going. Next is SharePoint Online. So if you just look at some of the things like just making the basic collaboration experience better between Office and SharePoint, making sharing more simple, things like co-authoring, as well as modern attachments. So how many of you use modern attachments now with Outlook in your daily life? If you don't, you should. This is one of my favorite features. It's the ability to attach a link to a document stored in SharePoint, and then from that link in the email, be able to set permissions. And then once you send that attachment, it inherits those permissions in order to ensure that you've got a single view of the truth to facilitate collaboration and cut down on email attachments. It's also a heck of a lot easier than having to go into OneDrive or SharePoint and share from there, or upload a document and then share from there. As video becomes more ubiquitous, we recognize the need to have a video portal as a part of Office 365. You can think of it as YouTube for the enterprise, but it's not just the video portal itself, but it's also embedding video into things like team sites and portals. This is one of the faster growing services in Office 365. It uses SharePoint on the front end and for content management, and then it uses Azure for the video media streaming services. We're doing a number of updates each month to Office 365 video, so things like thumbnail view, things like being able to embed video like you see here, as well as video analytics is coming out next month, which is something that a number of people have been looking for. And then, of course, Delve in the Office Graph. Tell you, this is one of those things that changes the way you work. And you have to spend a little time with it for the intelligence to start showing. But once you have, how many people are using Delve today in the room? It really, really changes the way you discover information. It used to be that you knew that there was something you were looking for, and you'd go and do a search for it. Now with Delve, my favorite thing to do is just open up my Delve app on my phone, and I can stay on top of what my team is working on. And I may not have even realized that there was a document or a project or something going on that I'd be interested in, but because of the intelligence and the trending, those things that I have permission for, of course, I see. And it's a new way to then not just discover information, but also discover people who maybe I didn't know were working on a certain project or a certain document. And that comes to one of the new areas in Delve, which is the people profile. This is going to be a big investment moving forward, is the people experiences. And the people page came out with things like being able to do blogging and authoring, but really it's evolved to now be the place where you can really learn about somebody in terms of their interests, in terms of what they're working on, who they work for in the organization, and then directly from that people page being able to send an email or do a Skype call. And so it really is turning from discovery to discovery and collaboration, focused on not just information, but also people. Because if you think about it, a lot of times, you may not know a document that you're looking for, but you might know the person that's working on something. So it's a lot easier to think about finding information associated with that person or that group. And then we also have just introduced an enhancement to the SharePoint Sites page. So again, using intelligence from the Office Graph to make it easier to find sites and to have recommended sites come up that you probably should know about if you don't know about, or recent sites that you visited. So it's a simple change, but it's pretty powerful using intelligence to be able to make it easier to find and locate sites within Office 365. So those are some recent innovations on SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business, and I'm going to have Chris come up and...
Great. So the first thing I wanted to do is kind of walk through a typical scenario. One of the things that we know is essential for how people work and how they work together is recognizing the role that mobile devices play and making sure people have a great experience across mobile platforms. In this case, we're looking at what a section of my OneDrive at work looks like using the Windows Phone application for OneDrive. I can browse through lists of content and quickly select content that I want to share out with people. In this case, real-world scenario, getting ready for this deck, the source of some of the data, Seth was asking me what the material is so he could read up on it and be familiar with what this was. I'm able to use, when I get that request, not be tied even to a tablet, but be able to be wherever I am in a hallway or in a car or somewhere and be able to quickly pull over to the side of the road and send a document over to him from where he is. Because
don't do it while you're driving.
Yeah, no, don't, collaborating while driving is usually frowned on in most of the 50 states. In similar fashion, just to illustrate, for those of you who haven't used modern attachments, that ability to recognize when content is being stored in OneDrive, and I can intelligently apply permissions to it, that's extended to the Outlook client. So similarly, if I come here and I'm sending something to Seth about survey data, and I just want to insert that attachment, it's going to see recent items that I've selected, and I can browse out to some of my locations, jump over to OneDrive, drill into my research, and here's the file. And when I add this as a modern attachment, you'll see I have the ability to, what the user experience, it looks like it's an embedded file. It's really a live link back to where it is.
And you can see that from the little cloud icon there in the attachment.
And I can, through the drop-down, decide if I wanted to change the permissions and say, I only want Seth to be able to view this. It's a PDF document, so you can change that on the fly there automatically. Finally, just taking a look at where we are with those Delve user experiences that Seth was just talking about. Delve for me is a powerful way to discover what's going on in my organization that I might not directly be able to know about it. Again, it is a people-centric activity. I can come to my profile page here and see all the things that I'm working on, find out people in my organization. If I wanted to jump over, say, to Bill Bear, discover information that's going on in that he's working on, I can see he's working on some stuff on the SharePoint 2016 release.
Don't read this. This is live data, I can see.
This is live data, but
it's our real
blurry.
environment. Good demo.
But lastly, with it being people-centric, I'm also able to measure my own collaboration using the power of the Office Graph for Delve Analytics. So jumping into the analytics screen, I can see for a typical week. This actually, for me, is not a typical week since I was nominally on vacation last week. But I can.
Yeah, you were.
But I can scroll back to a more common week and see I'm spending. I spent 9 hours in meetings during the week. I spent 9 hours responding to email. See who I'm working with the most. I worked with you for nearly 4 hours. Sorry to say, from your perspective, I'm sure.
Hopefully it was okay.
Yeah, it was good for me. Reminding me people that I haven't been in touch with. A reminder that I might want to reach out to some of the other folks who sit around the team, and be able to compare how my performance is against other similar people in my organization. So again, being able to use actionable intelligence. We recognize that work-life balance is important for people, so being able to measure how much time am I actually working outside of work hours. And in this case, it caught me with 4 hours afterwards, which is a reasonable balance, and being able to set personal goals and measure your progress against them.
We've started internally at Microsoft looking at how much does a meeting cost? I mean, and you can do it based on salaries of people in the rooms, and it's pretty staggering if you start measuring that and talking about it, how it improves people's preparation for that meeting. Maybe they'll attend, maybe they won't, but making sure that people are spending time with the right objectives and the right agenda, and not being sloppy with meetings, both that they organize and attend. Chris, I don't know if you're going to show this as well, but if you just go up a little bit, underneath each one of those, there's an ability to edit the goal. So if you think about it, it's almost like if you've used a fitness tracker. Measurement drives behavior, right? So if you really want to reduce your amount of time in meetings, or reduce your amount of time in email, or maybe reduce your time of working outside of work hours, it's an ability to edit the goal and then have targets, and then measure your progress towards that target.
And so now I've adjusted my goals and showing me that I'm well below goal on that. And again, the organization is able to pull all those things together. So,
great.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thanks, Seth.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So wanted to show you maybe some new things that you hadn't seen as much before, but you can get a sense of how, when you have that intelligence layer from Office Graph, how you can start bringing that forward in a way that can allow people to better connect with information and people, as well as better manage their time and make sure they're focusing on the right activities as well. So now let's talk about SharePoint Server 2016. How many of you now have already downloaded the preview, which was in November, or the release candidate that we released in January? Show of hands, how many people have downloaded already? So pretty excited about SharePoint 2016. It really is the most high-performant, high-reliability, high-scale server that we've ever done before. We took all of the learnings from the work that we did in running SharePoint Online at scale in our own data centers, and then we brought those learnings back into the server. And the result, for those of you who are in IT, is things like a reduced data center footprint, lower operational costs, reduced hardware, better management. It also has things for end users as well. So we have a new access to from mobile to things like information, applications, and people. We have new touch-based experiences across devices and screen sizes. There's a new files experience within SharePoint now. And there's a consistent user interface, which I think Chris is going to show you, between SharePoint on-premise and Office 365, including the new app launcher. So it's a lot easier for users to go navigate back and forth between Office 365 services and on-prem, and making it more or less transparent to them, because they really don't care. And then a bunch of new security and compliance enhancements that we did since SharePoint Server 2013 in SharePoint Online, and now we're bringing those back into SharePoint Server 2016. So things like built-in security, compliance for both admins and users. We have the data loss prevention policies and policy templates that you can then use to customize DLP within SharePoint Server, and a number of other things as well. I mentioned sort of the improvements in performance, reliability, and scale. The other thing that we've done is a new role-based installation process called MinRole, which reduces the data center footprint with just 3 roles now, which is pretty significant for those of you who have done installations of SharePoint Server in the past. And then one of the areas I mentioned earlier that's a huge investment for this release is revamping how we do hybrid to make it much easier for customers who want to maintain a server, on-premise server environment for things like sensitive content or custom applications, but they still want to be able to provide their end users with more collaborative and mobile experiences, things like OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, team sites, Delve, like we talked about. And so it's pretty amazing when I talk to customers who were really sort of banging their heads at the cost and the time that would take them to be able to take advantage of the things that we're showing. And for them to know, for example, that on a mobile device that they can use Delve, just like other Office 365 customers, against a SharePoint Server 2013 environment, because we're making that backwards compatible, that allows them to get access to both their on-prem content and content in the cloud using the intelligence from the Office graph, because all of the index is done in Office 365. So it's pretty cool to be able to get access to those mobile applications to your on-premise data without having to do a full migration. Actually, the only other thing that I'll say there before I turn it over to Chris is I want to make sure people, when I say hybrid, they don't think about the old hybrid, because we've had hybrid capabilities for quite a while. But the reality is there was about a 75-page white paper that went along with it in terms of how to set it up, how to implement it, and it was pretty kludgy. Like if you made a mistake halfway through, you had to start over. The user experience wasn't great. And so I think some people associate hybrid with complexity. And so I want you to try the new hybrid capabilities and see that we've done things like a wizard-based configuration of a scenario-based picker. So you can select which hybrid scenario you want to do, like OneDrive or Team Sites, and then it's literally a wizard-based next to configure your on-prem environment with a cloud application like OneDrive for Business. And with that?
Yep. Thanks, Seth. So are we on screen? Great.
Yep.
So this is SharePoint Server 2016. We're currently in release candidate posture on this. And I think one of the most important hybrid capabilities, and it's one that I don't think we even talk about enough, is about that seamless user experience. If you look at it, this should look an awful lot like SharePoint Online, with a similar behavior for the waffle, being able to launch applications. Having a unified app launcher allows people who are tied to their premises environments to participate in that cloud innovation without necessarily having that jump and that leap between realizing they need to go somewhere else. So right here, directly from premises, I can come, and if I want to experience Delve, I can click here, and Delve is tied through hybrid search to all of the content that I have on premises and in the cloud. Similarly, I can jump over to my Sites tab. And the Sites tab is going to show me, from a user experience perspective, all of the sites that I follow or are suggested to follow, whether they live on premises or in the cloud. We're able to use hybrid search to discover those and wash that information through Delve to teach the user experience what we need to find out. So I can see right now, here's a site, and if I hover over it, you'll see odspsharepoint.com. That's something that lives in the cloud. SharePoint 16, it's down here, as well as being able to provide a little bit of telemetry here on, here's what's going on in these sites. So what are the most recent activities happening on each of those sites? And again, we're continuing to research the best ways to make this page ever more intelligent.
So this is an example of bringing the cloud to on-premises versus you having to go from on-premises to the cloud. And I want to make sure we're not confusing you. It's not that we're delivering Delve as a part of the server bits for SharePoint 2016. It's that we're allowing you to connect your SharePoint Server 2016 on-premises environment with Delve in the cloud and able to take advantage of intelligence. You just can't do, you don't have enough compute capacity to do things like machine learning and intelligence on premises, but this is a way you get best of both worlds.
And finally, from being able to leverage search, I'm able to, for example, if I just wanted to do a trivial search here for the word SharePoint, I have a converged set of search results. So with the hybrid search topology that we have, you're able to crawl content that lives on premises and bring all of those search properties into a unified index that lives in the cloud. and again, through hybrid connectivity, being able to extend those search results to one unified view of all the information there. So if I just blow this up a little bit, you'll see I've got content that's coming variably from odspsharepoint.com, that's the cloud, and some stuff that's coming from my SharePoint 2016 premises environment, the odspcom.co environment. So being able to bring all of that information together, recognizing, as we were talking about before with Delve, information architecture can be complex. And people don't always think of where did this particular file live and remembering all the places they need to go. The fantastic thing is we're able to use search and intelligence to show you the content you need tied to the people you work with most effectively without having to remember all the places to go and check and look that out. So I know we're running a little bit close to time, so we're going to try to get you out of here as quickly as we can. A few points on the slides I also wanted to wrap up here. If we could switch back. Great. So last month, we released the SharePoint Server 2016 release candidate. If you haven't already downloaded it, you can get to it through our website at Microsoft.com. The engineers are furiously at work putting the final touches on the RTM version, which we expect out soon. We're not ready to release that date, but I'm quite confident that you'll be seeing that in relatively short order, and encourage you, if you haven't already started playing with it, start to take advantage of all the investments that we've made in SharePoint Server 2016. We know that there's an awful lot of premises-based usage. We're going to see that for a number of years to come, and it's our goal to have that work as seamlessly as possible with the capabilities that we're adding to the cloud. Hybrid is definitely, I think if you looked at where Microsoft was 3 years ago, it was a choice between premises and this transitional state where you were halfway through a migration before everything lived in Office 365. We really recognize that the scenarios are far more complex. There are some fantastic use cases for full trust code that needs to live tied to a premises license. And we're working heavily to bring all of these capabilities forward for you, whether it's information about keeping a hybrid approach to my sites, where some sites may need to remain tied to a premises environment for reasons of custom code or data access or compliance, and being able to empower extranets with public-facing websites, being able to reach across the whole breadth of my information with our investments in DLP and in compliance. These are, we think, some of the key technologies to focus. If you need more information about this, please visit. We have a new web property we launched a few months ago, hybrid.office.com, where you can learn about all of the Office 365 hybrid scenarios tied to SharePoint and beyond. I mentioned full trust code. That is definitely something that we continue to invest heavily in supporting. We know that our developer ecosystem, as Seth mentioned earlier, is one of the most important parts of the lifeblood of SharePoint out there in the world today. We continue to support the add-in model as well as classic farm solutions. We also recognize that development happens in many, many new paradigms. There are things that the average user can do with setting data into a list and setting up alerts and some customization, which would have required a team of 24 MIT engineers 30 years ago to set up with the computer technology that we had back in the 80s. So we've really seen the rise of what's called citizen development, which are users who are not classic developers. They are the sorts of people who may have written macros 10 years ago. They're not living in Visual Studio, but they're able to bring the configuration elements that come through the browser, as well as the ability to write some pieces of script with some tools that we've provided out there for real-world solutions. And then finally, recognizing that information workers increasingly are using tools like InfoPath and SharePoint Designer. There's been a lot of customizations we know that are out there. If you haven't seen the announcements that we put out last month, it's important to know we're continuing to support InfoPath and SharePoint Designer for the next 10 years. So if you have solutions there, you can rest assured that we will stand by those solutions for years to come. We also recognize, and I'm going to pivot over to this in just a moment, that there are new tools and capabilities in that mobile-first, cloud-first world for bringing out applications. We really see Power Apps as being a fantastic way to take the data that you have in your living Office, SharePoint environments today and extend those to mobile clients, along with the ability to stitch up workflows using a very friendly user interface here I'll show you in a minute, tied to Logic apps. We recognize that the world is changing, and we're investing across all of these areas, whether it's making it as easy as possible to incorporate modern tool chains and JavaScript libraries and embracing Angular and Knockout and similar paradigms for professional developers, all the way on down to making it as easy as possible for the average SharePoint user to set up an application that they need to, and all tied to the store. So Power Apps, I mentioned. How many of you have seen Power Apps in action before? Some of you. Okay, so this may be new to you. Power Apps is a new design experience that's designed heavily for the mobile platform, recognizing that what we come to expect on our smartphones and tablets these days is ubiquitous access, a rich range of apps that I can add to any of my devices. One thing we know, though, is that the business world hasn't worked the same way. There's lots of reasons for that. The business world can be complex. We know from some studies that to stitch up a business application can require 5 or more data sources. IT is really tasked with maintaining an awful lot of historic, legacy, line-of-business application systems. But there's a whole mid-range of applications that can't be addressed using the tooling that's been available to classic IT so far. That's where we see Power Apps coming in. We recognize that there are lots of ways that applications get focused. The rightmost one here, long-term systems of record. Traditional IT builds long-term systems dealing with transactions, dealing with payment processing systems. In my experience at John Hancock, working at being able to track payments that go back 40 or 50 years for life insurance policies, this has been the domain. There's also a real need to deal with applications that run for shorter life periods, things that may be needed for a project for a year, or perhaps a week-long event. It's been too hard to get professional developers to commit to those kinds of solutions. That's really where we see Power Apps coming in, being able to quickly take what we've done always with SharePoint, which is being able to set up a list and tie it out with data and put it in people's hands, but now being able to have those hands go into mobile devices and dealing with things like short-term surveys. If you, for example, have sales onboarding events in the first quarter of each year, how we get that information out there. Surveys and processes that might be tied to HR or news or issue tracking that are mid-range, as well as being able to take on some of those most powerful tool sets that are out there. Power Apps, as data sources, can reach out to any of the traditional cloud providers that you can expect, Microsoft's own, Dynamics, as well as support for tools like Salesforce and Google and SAP, as well as being able to tie into traditional line of business data, using the Power Apps Design Studio to be able to push a unified application experience out to mobile, tablet, and desktop. So let me show you a little bit on demo of what a Power Apps experience can look like, recognizing we are pretty short on time here. My marketing area, we asked you to tweet with the hashtag SPTechCon before, so let's see what we have. I have already used Logicflow to reach out and scour the Twitterverse for what people are putting out there. We can see.
That's awesome.
See, we've got Adam saying hi to Mom, and some retweets from Brian and Joel and Mark. And so we promised this all looks pretty family friendly. Use the user voice. We love it. This is great. And it's great to be able to use Power Apps to get the data into SharePoint. But where Power Apps excels is being able to take that data and stitch it up into a quick application. So let me very quickly build an app here for you, tying out to that data, using the Power Apps Design Studio. It's going to look out at the connections I have available. You can see I have information that lives in SharePoint Online. You see a recent site that I've connected to. And it's going to see what lists are out there. Event Suites is one. Let's connect to that. And so Power Apps is going to recognize I'm designing for a smartphone and is going to quickly build an app that allows me to interact with the data in that list live from wherever I happen to be. You can see it's starting to do some bits of layout. And I can see all the tweets that come up here. Now, I could do some further customizations here, but very quickly, in honor of Zoolander 2, let's change this to the blue steel theme. And I'm going to tweak the edit screen here where I have a rating field. And I can say that I just want this to look like, it recognizes it's a numeric, but since I'm going to use this as something I want to edit with stars, change it to that format. And that's really all I need to do. I can go further customizations and change the structure of the fields and add some information, but I already have an app that I can then use and deploy and be able to work with on any mobile device that's connected that I want to share out to Azure. So let's launch this app. And again, I can see here's one shifting gears and scroll through all this stuff. Here's a retweet about top secret stuff. So I can open this up, a retweet of Laura Rogers. If I want to edit this, I may decide that this is problematic since someone may be putting something out there, so I want to put a star rating on that and put that down as a 1-star tweet. By doing that, no offense to whoever it is that's out there, I've already built a process behind the scenes that can look at what I'm doing with the data and then take further workflow actions based on the rating that I've done live. So Power Apps already has structured, I will show you a little bit of the design surface on this momentarily. So behind the scenes in Office 365, we can see Power Apps is available. Here's the apps that are there. Here's the connections that I can go out to, which I've already set up, a rich range of connections, including Salesforce and Twitter and so forth. The logic flows are what's processing behind the scenes. And so I already have built a flow here called problem tweet at event. The design surface here, you can get behind the scenes and deal with the APIs and write custom code behind it. But for the average user, if all we want to do is set up a process here I have something that's looking for a modification to an existing list. If that has happened, I'm looking at what the rating is. If the rating is less or equal to 1.5, I want you to put this over in a different area called the tweet archive, and then send an email to whoever I want to send that email to for a quick alert. In this case, I could change this and say I want this to go to my manager. And so anytime anyone who's using the app puts a 1-star rating, Seth or whoever else needs to know about this is going to be alerted. And the list of kinds of activities that you can take here is pretty broad. I can say I want to add new actions. And that list of new actions can include reaching out to Dropbox or Dynamics or Excel or Google Drive, translate something, all of the Office capabilities. We're currently in preview mode, and so we're going to be extending this as we get further to release, but just wanted to invoke some of the power of Power Apps for you before I turn this back to Seth to bring it home with what we see coming up.
Awesome, thank you. If you just go back to the slides. So I know we're a couple minutes over already, and you're scheduled to have break, so it won't hurt my feelings if you just walk up and go out of the doors. So with that, I want to thank all of you. Thank you very much for your ongoing support. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll be around for the next couple of days, so will Chris. So please stop by. Let us know if you have any questions, and love to hear your feedback.